I know, I'm excited too. It's going to be great. Good morning, and good afternoon. Depending on where you are in the country, we are so glad to have you join us today to talk about getting started with family-centered coaching. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today on the next slide. We are going to just talk about what is family-centered coaching. And we have Devin Stubblefield here, who is our lead coaching trainer, who has been coaching and training for over a decade, really take you through what is family-centered coaching, how does it work, why is it important, and then really have as much time as we can to have a question and answer, to have discussion. So please, as we're going along, if you want to use the chat or the Q&A, and you just want to send in your questions as we're going, we'll pause to stop to answer some of them, and then we'll have lots of time at the end to answer more. So I want to just introduce myself first. My name is Rachel Brooks, and I'm a program director here at the Prosperity Agenda, and I manage our coaching training and all of the incredible solutions that are coming out of our innovation lab. And I am going to talk a little bit about the journey of family-centered coaching and how we got here, but then we're really going to shift over pretty quickly to Devin and talking about what family-centered coaching is, so that you can get an idea of how it's developed and what it offers and how to use it and what resources are available. So I want to start with the Kellogg Foundation, because they have been our partner on this project and on a couple of other really amazing projects we've been working over for a number of years. Our whole genesis of our organization has been centered around coaching and a coaching approach and an appreciation that every person is capable, resourceful, creative, and whole. And that is the basis of the Coaching Foundation itself. And so Kellogg Foundation, looking at this incredible, I think, nexus that was happening with both coaching in this field and also with two-generation work, we're able to see that there was this moment to develop and offer an approach that would combine these two, and also some really important disciplines that are the basis of family-centered coaching. And I feel like, Paula said it best when she talked about that families don't, build their lives in silos. And so this approach is really taking an understanding of that and bringing a really usable and a really comprehensive approach that brings that value to life. And it was developed with this vision from Paula Sammons at the Kellogg Foundation, starting at the end of 2016, and then went through this incredible process with 9 advisors and 21 content experts, and this incredible resource of people out in the field who were already developing tools, testing tools, and bringing those together to have this set of tools that really honors the resiliency and the diversity and the agency of families. It was tested through the STEPS programs for a number of months and refined and went through various processes to be able to really appreciate the effectiveness of it, to really test it. And then Kellogg Foundation looked for an organization who would house and manage and continue to refine and offer training around this. And that is the Prosperity Agenda. So that's how we got here. That's the journey that brought us to this moment when it was released back in August of 2017, and this incredible process that we've been on over the last year to work with organizations around the country who have been trained in and are training in family-centered coaching. I'm just gonna stop there, and just with that little bit of background so that we can shift over to Devin Stubblefield, because he's gonna really bring you through more of the nuts and the bolts of it, and then I'll come back later to talk about the resources that are available now and answer any questions you have. So Devin, thank you. I will hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. And I wanted to say good morning or afternoon to you, wherever you are. It's just a pleasure to be here with everyone today. And, as Rachel mentioned, I've been actually coaching, a practicing coach and a coaching trainer here for just about a decade, as she mentioned, and it's been nothing short of phenomenal. And I could say that the emergence of family-centered coaching has been really, really eye-opening in terms of what's now possible with working with families and the people that really make up a person's household. So it's really not just about the person that comes into your agency for services. From a family-centered coaching approach, we're really looking at the entire family dynamic. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what this is all about and how really it benefits all that are involved, even the people being coached and your agency and the coach, him or herself. So first of all, let's talk about what exactly is family-centered coaching. And so think of it like this, that that coaching in general, we always say that it's a client-led process or parent-led process. And that's no different here with family-centered coaching. We're saying that let's make the entire engagement be all about them and their issues, front and center, okay? And then we're also keeping in line with the coaching assumption that all people are creative, resourceful, and whole. And so we say that the parents, the family, they are the experts. They know themselves better than anything else. And so what we're going to do from a family-centered coaching approach is really to let that be our guide and really help them to understand that the relationship is going to be based on what's important to them, what matters to them, and what they want to accomplish and when. And again, not just for the person that comes into the agency, but for the entire family. And so when you take into consideration the entire family, then you also have to know that there are differing perspectives that come with that, because there are other adults that may be involved, children, and everybody is part of this process or this engagement. So we're taking into consideration multiple different points of view, multiple perspectives, multiple goals, multiple things that might be an issue for them that they all may have to go through to make it all work. And so we really are looking at this bigger concept. And so with that, we have to think about, well, what's the coaching mindset that's going to really bring this into fruition? So now the standard coaching mindset, calls on the strengths and capabilities of the parent or the families, okay? And so we have to make sure that that is exactly how we're showing up, okay? We want to show up with this whole thought process that we're facilitating bringing the family forth, bringing that parent forth, so that we can really make sure that the focus of the conversation, the focus of the activities are really centered around them. And so the mindset now, again, this family-driven mindset says that we have to maybe shift how we actually work with people. And the shift now is about not just making sure that we're helping the person that's in the seat, but at the same time checking in, asking questions about the entire family dynamic. That would include asking about the children, asking about whoever that person has defined as family. As a matter of fact, we have a tool in the toolkit that is titled "Who is in My Family?" And it gives the person an opportunity right there in your meeting to identify who those people are, what their names are, and how they support them and how they're part of the family dynamic. It's a very, very interesting tool, and it's probably one that doesn't exist in a lot of other types of coaching toolkits, but it really is designed to help that person to understand that we really mean business when it says that this is a family-centered coaching approach where we want to know who is the family. And so we go ahead and we have them do that, and then we base our conversations around what they've answered. Now, in terms of building a family-centered coaching mindset or a family-focused mindset, okay, it's built on the fact that the family, they kind of know what they want. I mean, they have a general idea that, what they want to improve upon, what they want to accomplish, what kind of things that will make them feel like they're stable, or the things that makes them feel like, they're really progressing forward in life. And so putting that out there in the conversation also means that what we have to do, now I'm talking about us as practitioners, what we have to do is to really believe that they do have their own answers, okay? That they really do. And we have to believe that they have the ability or the capacity to pick themselves up and to move themselves forward. Now, if that is the focus of how you are bringing forth your coaching presence, then that's going to create a different type of conversation. So now it's not about where can we pull them to the finish line, can we push them to the outcome? It's now less like, all right, the family, the people that they've identified, and auntie or uncle or mama or daddy or papa, or whoever it is, that they can take charge, and we allow that. We give them complete reign to be able to interact with us from that vantage point. Okay, and so that's really what it's about in terms of building this family-focused mindset. So again, it's the shift that we have to make. Now, when we talk about this, now from us, there is another tool in the toolkit that really gets down into how do you prepare to actually have a conversation for family-centered coaching. And so one of the things is really, you got to obviously be clear, be 100% present with the family or the person that's showing up in your office on that day, which means that we have to move into self-management. Those of you who've already been through coaching training already knows that there is this whole concept of self-management where you're making sure that you're not in the way of the participant. You're making sure that you're not having judgments, or you're not making statements that would make them feel awkward. You're really, really taking yourself out of the equation and then responding to them accordingly. So that means that you got to also, kind of take care of yourself in that way, and to make sure that you understand that it's not that they don't need your brilliance or they don't need your wisdom. What it is that our first engagement and our first response is going to be based on what they're bringing, not what we're bringing. And so the other part of this is examining our hidden biases and to be aware of the impacts of institutional racism. Now, this is a very incredible distinction of family-centered coaching that I believe really, really resonates with lots of people around the country, especially when we're working with people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultures, who may have experienced a certain level of racism or exclusion or whatever it is that they feel like they really haven't gotten a fair opportunity. And so one of the main portions of the toolkit is really having you as a person, as an organization, to really think about examining hidden biases. Okay, so let's look at that for a moment. Now, I want you to look at the graphic that's here on the screen. Okay, so when we look at this, we see that the organization has given everybody a box so that they can elevate themselves to get some sort of benefit, the benefit being the fruit on the tree. Now, on the left-hand side, everybody got one box, but because of the different capacity levels of each family, there are some people where only one box is needed, and then that works for them. There are other families where the one box still isn't enough, and so that there is still a need for more. So when you go to the right side of the graphic, you can see there that the people that may need a little bit more assistance, then they got more boxes, okay? And so what we want to do is make sure that from an organizational standpoint, that we're not just giving out boxes and saying, okay, everybody got one, but we're saying that we're distributing things in an equitable manner so that everybody still can get the benefit. And so this illustration really captures it all in terms of how we're wanting organizations to rethink how they're actually engaging with people to make sure that we're not inadvertently excluding some people that have lower levels of capacity. Okay, and so yes, we talk about race and equity, and so we want to make sure again that you as the coach, okay, or you and your organization really begin to explore how your individual biases or your organizational biases, again, not intended, but things that just happen, things that are in place that actually could make people feel like that they don't have enough boxes to reach the fruit. So now, that being said, I want you to understand that that's a major point of what we call the fluidity of approach. And the fluidity of approach is really about looking at, well, if we're doing what we can to make sure that every family feels that they are not excluded, or they feel like this is really helping them to get the benefit, then okay, so let's say we accomplish that. And so we make people feel that way. But then depending upon how people are showing up, meaning the family, and whether they might be ready for change, maybe they're not, maybe they are motivated, maybe they're full of anxiety, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're full of scarcity, whatever the case might be, we have to adjust our approach in the family-centered context to one of these three areas. We have case management, okay, and then we have readiness assessment, and we have goal setting. And each of these areas really is about the three different ways that we can show up for that family and really help them. And so in the toolkit really goes in depth about how you can show up based on how the parent or the family is showing up in terms of what the response should be and what type of approach that is necessary for them on that day. That is the fluidity of approach. Now, I want to say this. I'm going to kind of break it down for you in a moment, but I want to say that I want you to get this. And it is that identifying which approach to use is a central element of family-centered coaching. It's really the basis of how we start with a family, understanding how they're showing up, and then we making sure that we can adjust our approach to them. Now, do they have a say-so on that? Absolutely, because it's a parent-led process, a family-led process. So yes, you can certainly ask them how they would want you to work with them on that day. But there are also a format that we provide in the toolkit that gives you kind of a way to look at it. So I want you to really look at this screen here. Now, notice on the left-hand side, we have the stage of change. Now, the stage of change is some research that has come out that says that, everybody is not really ready to start taking actions to improve a situation or a circumstance. They may think that they want to, but in terms of their ability to actually take the step forward, there are different levels of stages of change. So starting at the top, notice it says not ready for change. And from the parent's perspective, they're telling you maybe they can't even think about changing right now. It's not on their mind because maybe they don't see that it's possible. And so notice on the right-hand side, the suggested approach is case management. Now, in the case management hat, when that's on, we're suggesting that the staff member or the coach actually helps that person to really understand, well, what's going on? Is there some sort of crisis or hurdle that needs to be overcome? Is there some immediate benefit that they need to get right now so that they can have the bandwidth to even have a conversation? So we need to move into case management mode at that point when they are not ready for change, versus when they move into pre-contemplation. And pre-contemplation is when they start saying, well, change what? Maybe I just can't change. Maybe I haven't even really thought about how I could change. So that they're really not really thinking that it's possible for them. But when they move into contemplation, it could be that they're saying, okay, well, maybe I can change, I might, or I may. And so those are phrases that you may hear. And then, of course, going into preparation where they're saying, okay, I'm ready. Okay, but how do I do it? I will, but you have to show me. So we're saying that is the readiness assessment phase where you're moving into more or less like motivational interviewing to really help the person to assess, what's going on with them in terms of their ambivalence around changing or not changing. And so really getting that nailed down so that we can help them to move into action, which is the next phase. And action is saying that they're doing it now. Let's take the next step. Let's do it. And then maintenance is, okay, they've done it. Now, how can they keep it going? And so in that phase, then we're suggesting that you move into goal setting. And that's really the coaching aspect. From its truest sense, we're moving into coaching where we're saying to them, let's talk about, what this means, what this outcome is going to look like, how we're going to get there, what resource do you need? So that's where the coaching comes in. And then recognizing that we don't live in a perfect world, things happen all the time. And so there might be something that causes the person to relapse. In other words, that they fall back down to a lower level of a stage of change. And so we're suggesting that the approach now is to move back into readiness assessment, move into that motivational interviewing type of role so that you can really assess what's going on and understand what's it going to take to get that person or that family back in action. So this is what this is about. In terms of family-centered coaching, we're saying, understand that this whole fluidity of approach is what is going to work if we all understand that it's about meeting them where they are. Then this matrix, this fluidity of approach is the execution, it's the implementation that we are recommending from a family-centered coaching approach that should be done in order to maximize the impact of the engagement. Okay, so you're going to be flowing in between these three: case management, readiness assessment, and goal setting, which is coaching. So I know that there's a lot of the questions coming through. And Rachel, do you want to take some questions as we go through, or do you want to wait until the end? I just want to do a quick check-in with that.
We did get one great question as we were going on, which was about resources for understanding racism and implicit bias at an organizational level, at a personal level, and whether there are resources available as through the prosperity agenda or in the toolkit that can be a good resource for that. And I think one thing I do want to share really quickly that I'll share in the session is a great article that was written by Melissa at the Brighton Center, who's been a champion of family-centered coaching throughout this process and has tested family-centered coaching and was a guest on one of our webinars previously. She wrote about that experience of embracing an equity lens in the organization through this process of family-centered coaching. And I just want to share that resource and also say what I mentioned in the Q&A, which is that there is a great section in the toolkit, which you can download from FamilyCenteredCoaching.org whenever you're ready, that talks about some of the resources that we recommend for understanding implicit bias and understanding having a greater equity lens in an organization as well. But it's a really critical part to the goals of the development of family-centered coaching and also to the practice of it. Is there anything else you just want to add around that, Devin?
No, I think that was great. Thank you very much. We can certainly circle back to that if people have more questions around that. But thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. Awesome. Okay, so let's move ahead. And I also want to say here is another distinction for the toolkit, and it is taking from other disciplines, trauma-informed care, executive skills, and behavioral economics to also inform how we react and respond to the families that we're working with. And so I'm going to unpack each of these individually. We'll start with trauma-informed care. Okay, so we were talking about, equity, racial equity. And we're talking about how sometimes people may feel like systems and situations may cause them to feel a little bit different about things, different about the agency. And what's really, part of the reality is that people that are feeling that way, in addition to the fact that they may be low income, that in and of itself can create stress and trauma on a daily basis. And so what we want to do as organizations, as practitioners, as coaches, when people are with us, we want to actually create an environment that actually makes it very accessible for any person on any given day, so that they feel like that it's really truly a safe environment for them, that it's something that's going to benefit them, and that they don't feel different. They don't feel excluded. They don't feel like things are not fair to them. So these 5 principles here of trauma-informed care is what we're recommending that you actually have your coaches work to establish when people obviously are coming in with a bit of trauma, starting with safety. Obviously, that's really about the physical environment, creating areas that are calm and comfortable and free of distractions and clutter. Choice, making sure that the parent remains in control at all times. You want to make sure that they have the choice in every situation. And then in terms of empowerment, noticing where their strengths are and their capabilities are, and really maybe changing your conversations to a strengths-based conversation, so that we're really, really embellishing and really, really just giving them this bandwidth, because we're really supporting who they are. And then collaboration, okay? Making sure that it feels like a partnership, so that the family, the parent, doesn't feel like it's just them, that they have this big outcome that they're trying to accomplish, but they have to, track it on their own. No, we want to make sure that it feels collaborative, and it feels like that we're taking the steps with them. And then, of course, the final piece of this is trustworthiness. Okay, really making sure that we're providing very clear, consistent information that they can really rely upon. That's what is going to create what this trauma-informed environment, where now we can kind of give them back the bandwidth that might be lost from other facets of life. But when they are with us, when they are in our agency, when they're sitting across from us in the meetings, that we create these type of dynamics so that we can have the most fruitful type of conversation on that day. So that's what the trauma-informed care is about. Now, going forward, we also have to remember that there are executive function skills that could be diminished as well. And so what this means is that, first of all of us have different strengths and challenges related to our executive skills. And really what this is all about, it's understanding, what are some of the things that could cause any one of our skills to be diminished. And especially when there's stress involved, trauma, poverty, crisis, scarcity, those kind of things actually do impact the brain. And so from this perspective, there are 3 categories of these executive function skills, and they're listed here. The first one being how we organize and plan for things. So organization, time management, and planning and prioritization is in that first bucket. And so there could be some things going on in their lives that a person just really, maybe they have a lot of trouble being on time, or they can't plan, or they can't prioritize. They don't have the ability cognitively on that day and to do that. Okay, and so we have to recognize that. The second bucket is how we react to things. And this is when you might be presenting something to a parent or a family, and then you might notice how they're responding. Maybe they're not responding at all. So there might be a little bit of response inhibition, or people can't be flexible. They don't have a lot of flexibility or emotional control. Maybe things are so traumatic that it's really bothering them emotionally, and their emotions tend to come out. Maybe people are very anxious, very overwhelmed, maybe upset, and they're communicating with that emotion. Then there's stress tolerance, and that's really about people, they can't withstand a lot of different multiple things going on, so their stress tolerance might be a little low. And so when that happens, then they could possibly have a different shift in their attitude or their mood. And then there's metacognition, which is really the ability to see the big picture. And if they're unable to see that what you're talking about and what your agency has for them is really ultimately going to benefit them, sometimes if metacognition is diminished, they can't see that. They can only see what's in front of them today. They can only see what's here in the immediate periphery, and that's it. anything outside of that is it maybe not comprehensible at this time. And so we have to adjust for that. And then the third bucket is how we get things done. And so there are people that would love to complete your action plan. They'd love to take that next step, but maybe task initiation is diminished and maybe they can't. Maybe that's what's creating the stress, because they know that they have to take a step to do the task, and maybe that is what's causing the problem. But then for some people, there's sustained attention where they can't focus for very long. Then goal-directed persistence, that's a big one, where people actually set goals, but anything can derail them from progress towards that goal. Okay, and so they get off track, and you have to reset. And in some cases, you may have to change what the goal is. And then, of course, more working memory. Some people just simply can't remember, that maybe their short-term memory is just not there, and so they just can't really do that. So what we're suggesting with people that have diminished executive function skills is that you adjust for this and the best way you can, so that that person, again, on that day, feels like what's happening with you in your office, in your agency during the meeting, that it's really something that's really going to help benefit them. And so, and that's a lot. I mean, there's lots and lots of research on executive function skills. And so in the toolkit, there are some links and additional research information that you can really look at and go into to kind of see kind of where you're at with this in terms of your approach when executive function skills are diminished, and maybe some best practices that you can adopt as an office of what you do when these things are happening. And then the third piece of these disciplines is behavioral economics. And this is really about people and the choices that they make. And usually it's around financial things. And what we want to do is really think about helping the parents and the family really assess how they are making their decisions. And so what we want to do is, from an organizational standpoint, is to reduce the cognitive burden on them by providing them really clear and relevant information, and basically eliminating any hassle factors. So a lot of times where this comes in is like with paperwork or things or for compliance that you have to do. And sometimes it's easier to automatically opt people into things versus and giving them the opportunity to opt out versus they're not being opted in and having them to make the choice to do that. Sometimes if the choice is really already channeled for them, then that's easier for them to do versus the other way around when they have to make a decision to actually take the choice. And so the bottom line is behavioral economics, and this whole piece into family-centered coaching is really about you and your agency really structuring your benefits to be automatic, and providing choice to opt out, as I just mentioned. But it's really about making sure that we help people to make decisions. In other words, we're not making it for them, but we make it easier for them to choose their own decision. So that's what behavioral economics is about. Again, there are resources inside the toolkit that will point you to some deeper research on this. But these three disciplines, the three, really trauma-informed care, executive skills, and behavioral economics, is part of the dynamic that we feel is really what distinguishes family-centered coaching from other interventions. So I'm going to move on. I did want to share with you one tool that we have here, and then I'll explain from that tool about content modules, and you'll see what that means in a moment. But here it is. Now, you may be familiar with the Wheel of Life. This is a very popular tool in a lot of coaching engagements. And what it is that there are 7 domains around this wheel, and there's also a section for other where the family can write in another domain that might not be here that's really important to them. But here's what happens. We really want to start out by helping the family or the parent or whoever's in the office to assess their level of satisfaction in each of these domains. And then from there, start to have a conversation around what's going on around those domains, and having them to identify the 2 or 3 priority areas that might be most important to them that they might want to focus on as part of your engagement with them when they're in your program. And so what's interesting about this is that when we're going through the process of developing the toolkit, the point came up is that there are some coaches that are not as versed in some of the areas as others. And as you can see on the graphic here, the 7 is finances, employment, basic needs, there's family relationships, child well-being, health and well-being, and then legal. Now, all coaches, might not have proficiency in all of these areas. So what we did is we actually created what is known as content modules. So each of the domains around the wheel has a separate content module in the appendix in the toolkit where the coach can read and to get information on how to talk about these particular areas with a parent or family. And then there are also a list of powerful questions that can be posed during the engagement about that domain as well. And so it's a very, very awesome resource that's in the toolkit. It's in the appendix, but it's there as a total cheat sheet for anybody that is not well versed in any of these areas, but that happens to be the area that the family has chosen that's most important to them that they want to talk about. And so the coach can simply just go to the page in the toolkit that has that content module information, and then they can choose from the set of questions that they can pose to the parent, and also look at some of the resources and other suggestions that are in that content module that will help aid the conversation. And so that's why it was put in there, again, to really help coaches to not get stuck when they're dealing with these particular domains in the conversation with the parents. So it's really a big piece of the toolkit. There's several pages. And again, there's lots of links, lots of resources, a lot of additional information that will enhance anybody's knowledge on each of these domains. So I just wanted to share with you that tool because that leads into these content modules. But again, that is a major distinction of this toolkit from some of the other ones that may be out there. Now, in terms of the whole process, now when we talk about family-centered coaching, the framework in which we do all of this is embodied in these 6 steps. So these 6 steps, now it would be great if all 6 of these steps can happen in one meeting, but it doesn't have to. It's really about going at the pace of the parent, the pace of the participant, the pace of the family. But if it is possible, if we had to quantify how to do family-centered coaching, this is what it would look like. Step 1, as I mentioned earlier, preparing for the meeting. That's really internal, making sure that the coach, the staff, the organization is ready to really take on a family and to really coach them based on the principles and the values of family-centered coaching. Step 2, building the relationship, making sure that we are gaining rapport and that there really feels like there's a lot of trust there, and that, again, that we're not creating an environment where people feel excluded. We're really taking into consideration our own self-management, not allowing hidden biases to surface, and really helping to really meet them where they are. Step 3 is really get into the Wheel of Life. That's where the Wheel of Life tool comes in, and then the conversation ensues around those domains and maybe their areas of focus. Step 4 is assessing the stage of change in terms of what we went over, looking at the fluidity of approach. We're looking at, what are they coming in with today in terms of their motivation level? Are they ready to set goals, or do they still need to think it through? Do they want to move forward, or is there someone in the family that doesn't? I mean, so we're looking at assessing kind of where things are with them so that we can respond with the appropriate approach that's really going to help them on that day. Step 5 gets into the action planning. This is the plan, do, review process. There's a specific tool that gives them the ability to think about that priority area and then begin to look at the steps, and then you being able to facilitate a coaching conversation around that so that you have a workable action plan towards a particular goal. And of course, it doesn't have to just be one. There could be multiple. There could be smaller goals. There could be milestones, whatever is going to be relevant for them really appropriate, that's what we're doing in step 5. We're looking at how to really make that happen. Then step 6 is where we're doing support and accountability. And there's also mention of brainstorming, really doing effective brainstorming with a parent or family in step 6. If there's some things that were supposed to get done that didn't, if progress started and then it stopped, or there were some challenges that were unforeseen that comes up, then step 6 is really about helping to make sure that the entire family, the parent participant, stays on track to moving forward in towards that outcome or the goal that was set. And so that's the framework. And again, it doesn't have to happen all in one meeting. And matter of fact, it probably shouldn't for some families. It should happen over a course of multiple meetings so that there's a lot of chance for reflection and discussion and really doing some really in-depth conversing around, again, what's important for the family and their dynamic. And of course, establishing what that social support system that they may or may not have and seeing who can help them to actually take this journey. And so those are the 6 steps to family-centered coaching. And so now in terms of this final thing, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel in a moment, but I just wanted to say that obviously we look at this approach and we can look at, well, there's benefits on both sides. Let's start with you, the staff. Really, it's really about being in a place where you can be your best. And that's really why I love step 1 in this process, because it's about making sure that you, your organization, your environment, and all the things that comprise your ability to meet with a family, engage with a family, that's intact. That feels good. That feels nice, so that you can really be fully present and not get burned out, not get stressed out, and not take, negative energy or burdens into your meetings with families, but you go there with full peace and full resolve that it's going to work and things are going to be great with that engagement. And then of course, with the families, as far as the benefit of that is making sure that the families can bring in those important people in their lives that will be participating in the goal process, participating in the change, participating in the steps, and really creating a synergy in their family dynamic that maybe wasn't there before, or maybe it was, maybe now it's enhanced. And so there's much benefit for that. And so that, in a nutshell, that's what family-centered coaching is all about. And so it's really there, again, to really help everybody to really find this new way of engaging and do it with resolve and peace and happiness. And so, Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you and for you to come on and say some more thoughts on family-centered coaching.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that everyone here got a chance to just get a small introduction to what Devin offers through our training and get a sense of this infrastructure of family-centered coaching and the values and goals that are really embedded in it, as well as, the science that really informs its development. We want to take some time now to just see if there are questions that we can answer at this point. I'll just take this moment to talk a little bit about what you can do next if you want to understand this a little bit better or spend some time with the tools. That URL that you see at the bottom, FamilyCenteredCoaching.org, will take you to the Prosperity Agenda's website, and you'll see a few things there. You'll see the Family Centered Coaching Toolkit, which you can download and spend some time with. I will say that whatever your next steps are, there are some really fantastic free resources that are embedded in that toolkit and in the 2 other documents that are available to download. So I really encourage spending some time with that so that you can see if any of those resources might be immediately useful to you. So if you go to that website, you'll see that you can download the Family Centered Coaching Toolkit. You can also download a more focused document called the 6 Steps to Family Centered Coaching. And that's a more brief document that really shows the particular tools, some of which that Devin already talked about today, and some of which that you can implement immediately. You know, I find that a lot of those early relationship building tools are what really can transform engagement with families, and those are really accessible. There's also some great tools in the toolkit that are about self-care, about implicit bias, about supervising, and I think those are all tools that that I think people will really appreciate as well. Then there's also another document that is called the Organizational Guide and Partnership Guide. And that has a couple of assessments through it that you can do in 5 minutes. And they're really a resource to being able to understand where you see yourself as an organization, either individually or as a group. You can go through this assessment and really understand where are you in the continuum of being a coaching-led organization, and where are you in the continuum of being a whole family or 2-generation organization that's led by that work, and where do you feel like you can grow as an organization towards some of those areas that are important to you and your values, your mission as an organization. Those assessments are also on our website, just in a SurveyMonkey electronic survey. So we see those results in aggregate, but we don't see who completes them. If you'd like to have a copy of those for your own organization so you can send that around and see your own results with more detail, please send us an email and we will send over a copy of those to you as well. We find that that has been a great start for a lot of organizations to complete those assessments individually, look at them together, and just have a discussion about where you see yourselves as an organization. There's also a button on that page that allows you to just get a conversation with me, and I would love to do that, to talk about where you're at as an organization, and what kind of resources available, what we're doing as the Prosperity Agenda to scale this nationally through a number of organizations, through training partnerships and through organizational partnerships. So please use that button to click on a time. There's lots of different options throughout the week so that we can have a conversation. We do have a question, which is about the training we offer and whether it helps deal with issues of family members not buying into the process. That is a really great question, and I know I've heard Devin talk about this a little bit. It often comes up in training because people do have that question, and let me just pass that over to Devin to talk about how you answer that in training.
Okay, so that is a great question, and it's really about understanding, well, what is it about the process that the family is not agreeable with? What is it about that? And so that's really where you're going to move into that readiness assessment area. And I strongly recommend that when you get the toolkit and you're able to go through and look at some of the suggestions that are there around how do you really help a family to overcome maybe their ambivalence around moving forward. And what is it? I mean, it could be something very minor, but then again, it could be something major too, but we don't know that. And so one thing that I always say, and I say this in every coaching training, not just with family-centered coaching, but it's like, if a person has an issue or some sort of thing that in their mind is a big hurdle, then there's no amount of coaching that can happen until there is some perceived level of resolution, or at least that they know that there is a solution coming. Because once you are able to address whatever that presenting issue is, then now they open up, and now they're a little bit more willing to have conversations and maybe go a little bit deeper into determining what they actually do want. So it's really going to boil down to how your agency is going to adjust again with the readiness assessment, and then spending as much time as possible with that family until you have resolved or gotten over that particular hurdle that has presented itself. So, and there's no time frame for that. It might take a couple of meetings. It'd be more so that people just want to be heard. But really and truly, it's about you making sure that we move into that readiness assessment mode and being prepared to really go through those types of conversations around understanding, well, why aren't they buying in? What is it that they'd rather see that they're not seeing? And really pinpointing that and seeing how you can respond. So thank you very much for that question. That was a great question.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to answer another question that came up, which was just about this recording of the webinar being available in this slide deck. We record this live to Facebook as we're presenting, so you can go to our Facebook page for the Prosperity Agenda and see this recording right now and share it with others, or have a copy of it there. But we'll also put up a recording of it on our YouTube page, and we'll share that with you by email tomorrow so that you can go and see a look of it too. Please don't hesitate to, I'll put my email up too if you want to just get a copy of the slide deck itself or a PDF of it. Please send me an email. I'm Rachel B at theprosperityagenda.org. So any other questions? I know, one question that also just got sent to me on the side here was a little bit about complementary tools. A lot of people are using a lot of other forms, a lot of other tools, a lot of other approaches and different modules as a part of this too, whether that's something like the mobility mentoring tool from Empath or another tool that they're already using. And I wonder, Devin, if you could talk about, because we've had a lot of partners who've used different tools as a part of this, how those things come together, how you integrate some other processes or approaches that you might be using at the same time.
Well, really, that's going to be based on what the family wants. And certainly, family-centered coaching is not meant to be exclusionary to all other forms of engagement. It's really designed to be a supplement, an augmentation of what you're doing. And so we totally recommend that if you do have other tools that work from your prior engagement, certainly use them. We're suggesting that you use the tools in the family-centered coaching toolkit as a way to facilitate getting through the 6 steps based on the framework that's presented here. But that certainly doesn't mean that you cannot add other things, other tools or other maybe interventions that would work for that family on that day. So, and again, I want to make mention that the toolkit is open source, which means that as an organization, you may find that you may want to adjust how a particular tool is being used, in your coaching sessions with clients. So that's okay. I mean, it's totally okay. It's really designed to help you to create the best atmosphere and the best environment that your coaches can actually engage with the family. So we certainly encourage the use of other tools that you have that's working in addition to this framework.
Yeah, I think if you look over the 6 steps specifically, each one of them has a targeted goal. And I think especially around building relationships and starting to understand a family, there are a lot of great, tools that people are already using to just get, a big picture about what that family is facing. And I think whatever is working for you in that way, that's a great place to be able to integrate those tools into that process, because building that relationship is really what's key to this entire approach really working. That they have a chance to tell their story, and there's somebody there to listen and ask those powerful questions that really build a relationship, so that you can have that openness and that motivation to be able to set goals with somebody in that kind of environment, which is not an environment you're always in by choice. And so, to use those processes to be able to create that safe space within that environment is so critical. And I think, just like this approach really focuses on the parent being the expert, it also focuses on the coach being the expert of that system and that environment, and knowing what works well in that environment and making the best possible environment for the family to be successful and set goals. There's another question here that's about when we speak of the coaches using the tools in the toolkit, are we speaking about trained coaches, or are we speaking about a definition of coach within the FCC model? This is such a great question, because he's talking about, when he thinks about a coach, he's thinking about a certified coach. So let's, thank you so much. That's a great question, because there is definitely a path to certification that can include family-centered coaching, but it is different. And I think the definition, Devin, is still really consistent. But there is a difference between this and the certification process. Will you talk a little bit about that, Devin?
Well, specifically in the Family-Centered Coaching Toolkit, it starts out, the first section of the toolkit is telling you from the perspective of the family-centered intervention, this is what we're defining as a coach. And that coach is using the coaching approach, which is defined by, I know there's multiple organizations like the International Coach Federation and Coach Training Institute and all these others that define coaching based on their certification levels. But here's the thing. What is listed in the toolkit is the definition of a coach as it relates to this intervention using the fluidity of approach, that the coach will go in a capacity of this intervention where it's client-led. It's really about them having their own answers and them actually establishing a goal that they are going to be pursuing. In addition to that, though, it doesn't stop there, but then it goes into the fact that there may be some time where motivational interviewing may be necessary to assess their readiness and to move them off of some ambivalence. And then the third part of that equation is the case management. If there is some crisis or something that needs to happen in terms of intervention that needs to really come into their life right away, then we're, according to the family-centered coaching approach, we're saying that as a coach, you would help them to get that done. So that's a little bit different than what you may consider as a certified coach. This is not a coaching training that says we're going to teach you how to be a coach. This is a family-centered coaching approach. This is an approach through the conversations itself. The matter of fact that we do recommend that there are some level of coaching training that happens prior to family-centered coaching. It's not necessary, it's not really mandatory, but I would say that it helps when the coach has already been trained in coaching and then coming into the knowledge of this approach. So I hope that helps, Tom, give you a little bit of clarification on what we mean by that.
Yeah, there definitely is, I think, something really extraordinary that's offered with this coaching approach, which is that it really does try and put that adage of meeting families where they are into reality. And that reality of meeting families where they are is to offer different approaches of what's necessary in the moment and to say, look, there are some times where there's a crisis happening and people need support immediately and they need resources and they need to work together, really quickly to be able to address a crisis. And that might not be the moment for goal setting. And so what this really offers is a chance to have that as a discussion with the parent. What do you need right now and what part of this intervention? And again, maybe that's one conversation. Maybe it's about addressing a crisis with resources and really, more directive support, but then moving into a conversation that moves through stages of change towards goal setting. But it provides that flexibility. And I think what we've done over this last, 10 years of training and coaching is to find a training method for coaching that really works for this particular mode of service delivery. So it has more flexibility and it allows someone who has a case management background or all sorts of different backgrounds to come in and begin to adopt that coaching mindset, those coaching practices, those specific coaching skills, some of which are totally consistent with the international certification process, and some of which we've developed to really specifically address what this work looks like. So I'd love to talk more about what that training looks like and how that's integrated into family-centered coaching. We're down to just our last few minutes. I don't see any other questions come up right now, but again, my email is there. If you go to FamilyCenteredCoaching.org, you can schedule a conversation with me or just send me an email, whatever works well for you, because we definitely want to keep the conversation going. So we thank you so much for your time. And this will be available already on our Facebook page, but then on our YouTube page tomorrow as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Devin, for presenting on this. And we hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, thanks, everybody. Have a great day.